Have you ever imagined growing sideways? Probably not. Okay, maybe that's a little weird, but imagine if you had trees and plants that grew horizontally. This is a story of technology that is really, really cool and can drastically affect the way the industry delivers growth inside compressed spaces. You can use it in your house, you can use it in warehouses, we can use it around the world. This is a story of Trella. This is a story of Asia Atwood, and you're in for a treat on the DiscoPosse podcast right now. Welcome back, crew. This is a fantastic conversation with Asia Atwood. Asia is the co-founder of Trella.io. Not only is this an amazing technology, this is an exploration in how her career went from risk management to founder of a company around horizontal farming. This is some really badass technology, so I hope you dig it as much as I did in the conversation. We get into the tech, her approach to the business, what drew her and her partner Dre to make this into a reality. How awesome is that? And Asia is just a really, really fantastic human. As far as people go that you know are trying to have a real positive impact on the world, she is among a small list of folks that I know are really, really working hard to do something about it. They are also looking for this interesting idea of crowdsourcing investment. So if you want to get involved, you can actually do it. And there's links down below that'll show you where you can go to do that. So, and enjoy the show, because Asia was a real pleasure to chat with. Oh, and before you do that, if you don't mind, if you could just go ahead and, speaking of horizontal, can you go ahead and can you just tap that like button and hit the subscribe and hit the little bell icon, and that lets you know when new episodes come up. Drop a comment, say, hey, love the show, Asia, come on back. It was a real pleasure. All right, let's get to the good stuff. This is Asia Atwood on the DiscoPosse podcast.
I'm Asia Atwood, CEO and co-founder of Trella, and you are listening to the DiscoPosse podcast.
All right, now I know we're in business. That's like my go signal. Once I hear that phrase, I'd say the microphones are on, the on-air light gets turned on, and life is good. So Asia, thank you very much. I'm so glad we got a chance to chat, because your personal story, your business story, and everything you're working on is just, it's enthralling from every angle. So being able to spend time and exploring some of that with you is something I've been really looking forward to. For folks that are new to you and new to Trella, if you don't mind, Aja, let's give a quick sort of bio on you and the company, and then we're going to dive into what I'm excited about and what the world should be excited about with what you're doing.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, Eric, getting a chance to share the story with your listeners. Um, I'm Asia Atwood, living in New England in the Massachusetts area right now. Kind of been on the East Coast most of my life, done a lot of world traveling. Got into the corporate space right out of college. Went to Northeastern, and after college, started working in something called risk engineering, property risk engineering. And basically, what that is engineers that go around and assess how bad will it be if there's a fire or some sort of natural catastrophe, explosion, etc. And then what can we do to try to mitigate that with technology, different construction protocols, building codes, etc. So I did that for a very long time, for about 15 years. But while I was doing that, I was always dabbling on the side with a little project here and there. I think maybe when I was maybe 29 or 30 years old, I got that. I think I need to be on my own and create something on my own and be an entrepreneur, but wasn't really ready to make that full fledged leap right away. So I got into trading, day trading, and tried to, and came up actually with a solution to automate identifying Fibonacci levels Um, and that was something small, not very big, but had some cash flow coming in, and it was a great learning experience. And then after that, I moved. I took a really good break and started just you know working on my leadership skills, management skills. Got a coach, to really figure out what do I really want to do, and if I want to do something big, I'm going to need a team. I'm going to need to figure out how to lead people, how to manage people. So started working on some of that stuff to get myself prepared. And then also on the side, uh, I always played sports, and was what they would call a weekend warrior. You graduate from college and you still want to play all the sports that you used to play in high school and college, and you're playing them on the weekends. So I got into playing flag football, and then that morphed into playing on a women's professional football team, where we were, full pads, full helmet, and you're doing that just because you love it. There's not like a great physical, therapy or a trainer afterwards to mend you up after you hurt yourself. So a lot of what we were doing was, self-medicating ourselves, and some of us are doing it with cannabis. And this is before, I'm giving myself away, but this was before it was legal, which which a lot of us did. Uh, but as the industry, especially in Massachusetts, started to develop, legalization was on the rise more, and I lived in a state where we were luckily able to get our medical card and home grow. So allowed, I had the ability to really dig into it and learn more about the plant, get a lot of education, and learned how to grow myself. So I got into growing on my own, got into growing other types of other food, then got into another a startup that was focused on the ag tech space. So that was my first entry into what I would say ag tech, where we were developing a system that would grow one plant inside of a container inside of a home. You may have seen competitors like that out there. There are solutions out there for that already, but we were working on something similar, and decided that I wanted to do my own thing, something a little bit more unique and just different. Uh, and took a break from that startup to give my brain a chance to soak everything in, figure out what I wanted to do, and voila, we got into Trella Technologies. So I'm now CEO and co-founder of Trella. Um, my co-founder and I are both engineers. We met at Northeastern University, and I came to him when I said, "Hey, I'm having a problem with my own grow in my basement. I travel a lot for work. I was still working my corporate gig at the time, so I was out of pocket, and away from home, sometimes for a full week, maybe every other week. It was getting that uh, intense. So trying to grow plants, even if you know grow them outside, grow them inside, they require maintenance. They require some sort of upkeep. And especially when you're inside, you have to manage your lights, manage your nutrients,
Right.
and a lot of that stuff can be automated. I know you may have had other guests on that talk about indoor farming technology. There's lots of stuff out there. The thing I couldn't figure out was how do I control how tall the plants grow. They're growing out of control while I'm away. They're growing into the lights. Getting too close to the lights is too hot, so they start to burn. Um, how can I create a situation where I'm controlling all of this foliage when I'm not there? So I got together with my co-founder Dre, and we started working on a solution, and that's what we have here today is Trello Grow LST. It's the only automated plant training system. We say it's the automated horizontal plant training system because what it essentially does is it grows a plant from sideways, from one side to another, keeping it at a predetermined height, so that you can keep them in really tight, short spaces, specifically stacked farming situations and container farms, or just in your grow closet. So
Yeah.
it's all about trying to grow whatever you want to grow wherever you want to grow it, because we need that option, especially as the climate is changing. So that's my a little bit of my history, a little bit about me. I'll stop talking and give you a
Yeah.
chance to
No, it's
follow up.
fantastic, and it's such a perfect like sort of top quick view of your progression. And the concept of vertical farming is something that people often hear about, is the idea that we could move into, instead of field farming, the traditional field farming, and then ultimately the impact there is that you have to have certain years of fallow. There's like there's things you have to do, the environmental impact of doing that, and with crop types there's a whole host of reasons why there's challenges there. And so folks think, okay, what can we do indoors? And that's fine as long as your plants don't grow up and down, which unfortunately most plants do. uh, so the fact that you went at it, first of all, you had the a personal problem that you could solve this challenge, right? And then from there, there's really kind of industrial level of capability that's empowered now because of that. And the fact that you use technology to solve this, patented at that, right? So you've actually, there's so much of the story that's incredible to a lot of people, because you've done so much right that I don't even know if you knew you were doing it right all the way through. Like
What? Thank you
in
very much, Eric.
it's
I
amazing because
appreciate it.
in hindsight, we look back on people generally, like, to understand the patenting and intellectual property protection, especially in mechanical design stuff, is super important. Having the foresight, though, the one thing I want to pick, I want to dig deep into Trello, the actual technology, but you said something that was very important to me. You think about getting into a startup, and the first thing you did was you chose to find a coach so that you could be a good leader. And that was like, I wish everybody would do this. Like, you really had the foresight that you knew that what you needed to do to be successful, to build a team, was to make sure you were ready for that. And that is such a beautiful part of the story, that you really saw that need early. And I can bet, as anybody that works with you would attest, that you did the right thing in making sure that that was front and center before you went to just throw a company in front of it.
Yeah, yeah. Looking back on it, um, it was kind of an organic progression to make that decision to do it. I was just trying to really figure out what do I want to do in life, and working with someone already. So I was already in that kind of mindset of you need help, so
Yeah.
get resources to help you with things. Um, but I mean, my coach at the time would say to me all the time, you know, you really could be a leader, and she would hear me from time to time say something, spout out a belief like, oh, it's too difficult to manage people. I really don't want to have to deal with people's problems.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how I saw the position. I saw my manager. That was really how he came across. He was just solving problems all day, which is what you do. But I think when you understand that you're not solving problems, you're actually assisting your team, so that they're enabling them so that they can do what they really need to do. It's a different perspective. But I had to learn that, through coaching, through reading books and taking courses, being honest with myself about my weaknesses. Still working on it, not perfect. But one of the things that, um, I think really sealed it for me that I needed to do it this way was my own experiences of working with leaders who unfortunately had a negative impact on my work life and some of the work life of my peers. And, when I was working, people I was
Yeah.
working with and working beside. And I said that, someone said something, I can't remember where I heard this, but it's, a, your boss, quote unquote, or manager, um, has the biggest impact. You have the biggest impact on someone's day because they spend a lot of time under with you. You could say something or do something that really throws their whole, and they take that home to their family, and it affects the community. So this isn't. It's a very important role, when you're leading a team and you're in charge of morale and just the culture and the mission, and it's very it's there's a lot of emotional IQ, I think, required for it. So I needed to step up my game, and I'm still working on it. But yeah, I just thought if I'm going to do it and I don't want to be what I've already seen, I'm going to
Yeah.
have to figure out my way of doing it so that I'm happy with the community and the culture that I've created.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful sort of empathetic understanding that you had early that more founders really could tap into is that, even before they know they're ready for it, sometimes just being able to start to recognize and look at like, yeah, like you said, everything's a work in progress. I mean, I can there's probably plenty of relationship counselors who are divorced. There are
Hmm.
plenty of psychologists and psychotherapists who are seeing therapists because they have their own. eh, No one is perfect in any way, and so it's always about revisiting and rechecking, and the fact that I said I had a huge respect just even in that fact that you can open up about that piece of your life and the importance to you, and not just to you but to the community that's wrapped around you. And I think that's really really cool. You could give coaching classes to many people I know on, on that capability. When you look at the initial problem, right? So obviously there's farming is a challenge, especially when you get into small space utilization. When you first thought you had a very distinct small space you had to solve a problem for, did you recognize early that this was a scalable solution?
um, yes, we did recognize it early because luckily an angel investor whose name I cannot recall, unfortunately. But if I see him again, and I will definitely thank him profusely. Said to me, before you get all willy nilly with this investment, that's the word he used. Um, you need to make sure that there's a market for it. So I spent maybe about 6 weeks just researching, indoor farming, modern farming, and that's when I found, oh, this would be perfect to be placed in racks for vertical farming situations. I'm seeing a lot of microgreens, a lot of lettuce, short, you know, tight things. I'm not seeing a lot of diversity in the racks, and we need a variety of plants. They all have different benefits, different things they provide to us from a health perspective, from a healing perspective. So it's like fruit's important.
Right.
It's we need to get those types of things inside as well and be able to stack them and make the most out of the vertical height that a building might have. So luckily, thankfully that angel investor said something, and we went and did some research and found, wow, no, this is huge. Like, this isn't just um, you know a cool toy for a cannabis home grower. It's that too. Like, I'm
Right.
not, saying that it's not just fun to have, because it is. Like, we enjoy having it, um, but it also has a greater purpose of trying to figure out how can we get taller plants indoors and stack them, without driving ourselves insane with trying to manage all of those plants on all those levels, in these different configurations.
Yeah, and the I guess maybe it's funny, like even just the way you describe things is so fantastic to listen to because it probably comes from your risk background. You're way ahead of thought evaluation before execution, which means that your execution inevitably is weighted strongly in the positive because you've kind of weighed a lot of risk in a lot of your decision making leading up to it. Again, it's a it's kind of not upside down. I should say it's non-traditional to how a lot of like just people are like, I've got an idea, I'm going to get some money, and then I'm going to see if it works. Yeah. You put far more effective risk planning towards it so that when you hit the true start line, I would believe that it should lead to like now all the positive growth can come because you've weighed so much of the negative and you're prepared, I think, for the risk more so than a lot of people would be.
Yeah, it's a positive, but it's also having having that risk engineering brain. It's a curse and a blessing, because I'm constantly evaluating. What are the risks? What are the pros? What could go wrong? How can I mitigate it? And it sometimes some people would say from outside looking in may have delayed our growth and how fast we can move. Um, but we're still making progress and we're still progressing. So I'm happy with that. And I'm not going to put speed on the list. I rather stay where my comfort zone is and be thoughtful and plan ahead and do things the right way. So yeah, a lot of thinking about the patent. My co-founder, Andres Chamorro, we call him Dre. He's a brilliant individual. We work really well together. Um, he's able to find solutions, and we brainstorm really well together. So, um, he's been incredible, but he also brought to the table that patent experience. He's very heavy in patents. Has a lot of I think he's over 30 patents either pending or already issued. So he has that mentality too. So we're very both of us are kind of like you know introvert. Let's overanalyze maybe sometimes to an extent. Um, so now what we've done is we've decided, especially in the last, I would say, mid 2020 moving forward, it's time to supplement those our skill set with, the other side of people that can do and that can, um, see our vision and do the communication and help push us, so that we get to that to the point where we want to be, which is
Right.
eventually acquired or to a global distributor. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is I love that understanding and the acknowledgement that yeah, risk awareness is beautiful in that it prepares you well for stuff, but it's very easy to get sort of like locked in and never proceed with stuff because it's like the over awareness of the risk profile is it's tough to escape sometimes, and it's easy to sort of talk yourself out of things because you see the inherent risks. And there's this really interesting thing that a lot of founders often are like completely blind to risk. They're like, risk is not my problem. My problem is getting this idea to the market, and yeah, someone else will take on the risk portion. You're like, well, I think you need to have some understanding of it. So it's but I
Yeah.
remember even like worked at a financial services company, and we're just going to do like a scavenger hunt for like a team building thing. And we get there, and one of the people that was with us for the scavenger hunt was our chief counsel. And so she's there like redlining the waiver, like dude, it's like she's like read through the no, we can't do this. I need you to sign that you're agreeing that you're waiving your waiver for us. And I'm like, it's okay. We're going to look for cupcakes in downtown Vancouver. This is not exactly we're not going driving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That'll mess up the vibe of it a little bit. But yeah, and then some people will say, you know, because we're in so we're not risk averse. We just I think try to identify and understand it and figure out how can we, just like I did in my old professional lifestyle. Let's see what we can do to avoid that as
Right.
best as possible, but still try to move forward.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's that concept as the saying goes, right? That plans are useless, but planning is essential, right? It's the fact that you're preparing so that you won't be caught off guard, right? You're
Mm.
willing to do something, you know, playing football. If we did if we looked at some of the data now and some of the, historical stuff on injury risk, uh, you'd think that they would just pull the game off of the map altogether, but we don't. We understand there are risks attached to it, but the benefits that we achieve are significant, right? Everything from physical to commercial, there's a lot of benefit to it all. So everything comes with risk, and it's a matter of understanding and mitigating that risk and then succeeding into it. really, and making it worthwhile to take those risks. I think that's the biggest piece.
Yeah, yeah,
When let's talk about let's talk about the physical, in the life of a plant as it gets into the Trella LST, and like what does this process look like as you, sorry, I'm Canadian, so I say process instead of process. So what is it, what is that early life of a plant as it grows into the system?
yeah. So basically, you can put um, any type of we call fruit bearing plant. So that could be cannabis, hemp, but it could also be melons, tomatoes, etc. So you're going to want to put in a fruit bearing plant. So in the case of a cannabis plant, it would be what's called a feminized plant. So something that's definitely going to give you the flower, not give you seeds.
Right.
The male plant gives out the seeds. So you would put whatever you choose in trello when the plant is roughly between 6 inches and 12 inches tall. And you can see behind me a little bit of the device. There's this green ring that's sitting up here on top. There's an opening. You can see my hand going through there.
Yep.
So the plant will grow up towards and through this green ring to the lights that are currently off, so that you can actually see it because they're blinding when I turn them on. But the top of the plant will come through here, and there are a group of sensors that are sensing what's going on. Is plant getting too tall? And if so, I need to move down the row, down this pathway. So in this case, we're going past me, past my side shoulder. It'll be growing in that direction. To grow for a length of 6 feet. This is our model 6. We have another model that's called a model 4 that only grows 4 feet in length. But basically, what it does is it's tracking how much growth is happening, moving sideways accordingly, and then there's this agricultural netting that holds all of the foliage in, so that the leaves and the branches don't, pop out and get in the
Right.
way. Um, and then we also have a series of fans, which you can't see from this shot, but there are some fans that blow air under the plant as it grows down that pathway, so that we're making sure that, since we're holding the plant, in a contained space, we want to make sure that we have lots of air movement to avoid microclimates. Microclimates can lead to bacteria and mold. So we've handled that with ventilation. And we also have sensors that are sensing temperature, the humidity, and the CO2. We're going to add some additional things onto that. We're talking to a couple of different companies that might help us, take this to the next level. Um, Take our app, our current app, to the next level. Um, but that's what it does. It tracks growth rate as it grows from one side to another, gives you some data and some information with the Trello Grow LST app. And then once the plant has grown all the way to the side, and that happens during what's called the vegetation stage. So, if you grow tomatoes or grow anything, there's a period where the plant is just building its structure. It's just growing the branches and growing the leaves. And then when the season changes, it starts to flower, it starts to fruit. So this automation process is happening during the vegetation process when the plant is growing its structure. We want that structure to be molded as we grow that plant. And then when it's time for flowering, you can take this comes out of the way. You take off the top mesh panel, and the whole thing is open and exposed to the lights above. So the branches stretch up towards the light, and then they start to flower. And we have some other types of trellis netting that you don't see in this shot that help it when they start to flower. They get kind of like floppy, so you want to hold those up. So we have another level of trellis netting that goes over the top to help with that. But the bulk of the work is done during the vegetation stage. Once it's time for flowering, the structure is there, it's all contained, and now you just have to go through that stretch period, and then you're ready for harvest. And you can take the whole plant out in whole. We have a really great picture of me holding a plant that came out of our Model 6. It's the larger unit, and I'm holding it over my head. That's one full plant, all intact, that I just chopped off at the base and pulled out of the unit. And or you could do it. You could harvest it in pieces if you want to just take a little bit, depending
Right.
on your needs. But that's basically what it does in a nutshell.
Well, and it's amazing because the amount of technologies that come into play and the amount of understanding of nature is, it's such an interesting merger. Like just understanding plant life cycle, when growth occurs, so there's that side of it. and then also the sensors and being able to measure and then create feedback and automation that's wrapped around it. It's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, yeah. There are a lot of moving parts. It's the development of the software, and we did this with bootstrapping. The two co-founders, and then we did raise some money, but for less than 600,000. We've gotten to this point where we've been able to get a patented product, but it did include software that had to be developed. We had to figure out how are we going to control the automation. Luckily, I brought the software experience to an extent when I was doing some coding with the trading software that I developed, and then Dre brought to the table his expertise for his medical devices and robotics, so figuring out how to control movement. And then we took a lot of courses, did a lot of learning on plant life. And I always say, people who dig a little deeper, that really, I'm not a horticulturalist by trade. I'm an engineer, and this idea kind of came to me suddenly. And even the vision of the device. I have notebooks where I was writing down, sketching out what it should look like, how it should work, and that just came to me. And I really, I used George Washington Carver as my muse. He basically learned a lot through just picking it up from nature, walking in nature. He literally would talk to the plants, and he just able to kind of pick these things up. So I always say thank you, George. I like to believe that you planted this idea in my head so that I could see it through. So that's how we got all this done. On multiple dimensions, we needed help.
Yeah, well, and but again, it's like you look at, especially when you mentioned sort of the where you are as far as investments at this point. Like some people couldn't write a bloody app, just a goofy mobile app that would play like Flappy Bird for the price that you've done a lot of real good groundwork that is a, I tell you, Asia, with every further detail I learn about you, my respect grows incredibly. You and Dre are really doing some great stuff with this.
Thank you. Got more to
When
do.
Yeah, well, that's it, and that's what I also, you can see that this is the beginning of something wonderful. When you think about now the secondary impact, right? And like there's the initial thing of like we can solve this very distinct problem here, and what's the scale, like what's sort of the size of market that you may be looking at in where this can be applied?
Yeah, well, so we need food everywhere. So it's a global. We start with our global market from that perspective. But um, you know, because of the risk engineering background as well, and specifically, I specialized in natural disasters. Um, so I spent a lot of time evaluating, damage from hurricanes, floods, hail, snow loading. We just got hammered up here in the Northeast and on the U.S. And unfortunately, one of our uh, grow friends, I call them, we're all a family, people that grow and share ideas and things together. Their hoop house collapsed
Oh, wow.
underweight. So, you know, I'm looking at it from a perspective of, okay, we need to grow food everywhere. We are having significant changes in our climate. It's going to have to be grown indoors, but it might also have to be grown in transit. We may need to figure out ways to grow food while we move it. One of the most expensive parts of our food supply chain is the transport. They grow it somewhere and they transport it somewhere, maybe to store it if it can last through a season, and then they transport it somewhere else. So to be able to maybe grow and transport would be, one way to dig into that issue. You have situations where people are thinking about leaving this planet and going to Mars and developing, populations and industries there. You're going to need food there. You're going to need food while you're transporting all that stuff there. So we're looking at this being used not just in a warehouse on a rack, but maybe being used in a freight container that's on a railway system, maybe being used in a NASA shuttle or some other type of you know device that transports people from Earth to the universe somewhere. Um, but it has lots of opportunity, lots of potential. One of the other things that we would love to explore is how if we can reduce the power consumption needed to grow plants. So we're also working with um, LED companies and testing out different types of LED systems. But what we really want to do, and people can, I'll give out the information later, and you can check this out to learn more. But we want to sync the lights to go on as the plant grows across this plane. So right now I've got a series of lights, LED lights over my plant. Um, if you can use your imagination a little bit and imagine a plant going from left to right, for those of you that aren't looking at this on a video, um, you're going from left to right, growing a plant for a 6 foot distance, and you may have 8 different lights, eight or 12 different LED lights
Yeah.
growing, hanging over that area. It only makes sense to turn on the lights where the plant actually is at that point. So at week one, the plant may have only grown 1 foot in distance. So you only turn on, 1 or 2 LED bars. When it's grown to 3 feet in distance, then maybe you turn on 4 LED bars. But it's about trying to develop the canopy and you only using the light when you really have to, and that can take down, our power consumption, and then that really allows us to be able to grow anywhere because now we're not relying on infrastructure so much. So I think Trella has a role to not just diversify the types of plants we can grow indoors, but to get that power consumption down as best we can, so that we can put these in enclosed containers that don't require that can be run off of solar panels, don't require, you know,
Right.
a substantial 200 power supply.
Yeah, the lighting is interesting, and I actually wanted to dig into this because, of course, sun being the nature's lights that generates growth through a chemical processes, photosynthesis. But there's a lot of things that why internally, as we've made the move from incandescents to LEDs and fluorescence and different types, how have you been able to have LED have the same effect that nature's sun has been able to give to Earth for so long?
Yeah, well, they always say there's nothing like a sun-grown, plant, and I got to stand by that. I can't say that it's 100% exactly the same, but I also think that there's something to do with soil, and all the different minerals and nutrients that soil provide. Versus when you bring it indoors, you're using, kind of manufactured nutrients that don't have as robust a variety of nutrients that soil might have.
Right.
So I think that's kind of where the taste and the quality changes might take place. Um, the LED the LED industry has come a really long way over the last, I'd say, 5 to 10 years. When they first came out, no one wanted to touch them, especially in the cannabis space. People, really just made fun of them. They called them blurples because they would be like red and purple and stuff. And you still have blurples out there. I mean, we started with blurples, so no shame or shade in that. But there are, there's Fluence Bioengineering, and a couple of other LED companies have really taken it to the next level. They're a little pricier. That upfront cost out of pocket
Right.
will be a little bit of a difference, but the operating costs are substantially less. And at the end of the day, the power consumption running through that light fixture is so much less, and it doesn't give off a lot of heat. So all of these like LEDs bring so many pros that kind of outweigh the fact that it's not the sun. But I think we can do better. I think we can get a lot better at that, and even try to find ways to utilize the sun indoors. There are people that are doing that too with different. I can only remember it by describing they're like skylights that are focused down, coming through a ceiling and focusing in kind of what's the word I want to use? Maximizing the light intensity in one space, but it's
Right.
the sun. and it's coming through, coming through a building, like a large magnifying glass of some sort. Um, so there are people doing all types of stuff out there with LEDs, and if we can use more sun, I'm into discovering those options as well.
Yeah, but it when you talk about the idea of in transit, off planet, you know, if we can get this technology right, that really enables a different future of potential. And even though it's we get these funny things that come out every once in a while, like nature's fruit is always going to be the tastiest, as you say, right? Like
Mhm.
in the same way that every once in a while you see sort of an article will come out where like astronomers are complaining about all these bloody satellites in the sky, they're wrecking the starscape because I every time I try and take a long exposure shot, I get all these swipes because of the
Space garbage.
low Earth orbit
Yep.
satellites. And like the social media tool that you're sharing from your cell phone of those pictures? Yeah, that's empowered by the fact that you've got these low Earth orbit satellites and CubeSats. And like, it's weird that we're going to have to shed a bit of maybe the pureness of the traditional flavor of fruit, vegetable, whatever. But to get nutrient value in a place where you don't have access to sun, it's pretty damn fantastic, if you ask me.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. And I don't think that that's not a great goal. Is to let's try to duplicate and get as close as we can to the true taste of a sun-grown, tomato plant.
Right.
It's possible. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities. I stopped. I don't do it like that whole "it'll never happen" thing. That's over with. It's
Well,
over.
if Elon isn't watching this one, because I doubt he has time to watch my stuff, but he needs to be watching you. You and Dre need to be getting people, putting you in front of folks like Elon Musk and other real big thinkers, because the potential is really really fantastic, and the opportunity is huge. And the fact that you are in that mindset that like no isn't an option, it can't happen isn't an option. It's actually one of my favorite. There's a recent podcast that was Lex Friedman is a MIT researcher, and Elon Musk was on his podcast, and he asked him the question was, you know how do you think about the risk of something and the fact that it may not happen. It's actually one of my favorite podcast moments because he stopped, and as if you ever watch Elon Musk and he's on a podcast, he really thinks about what he's about to say. He doesn't just jump in and start talking. And it was pure silence for like 20 seconds.
Mm,
And you could see him, and he's like literally like blinking, and eyes are darting around, and he says, uh, "That's never entered into my mind. Like, we just know we have to find a way to do it, and like that's just so no, no is not an option, right?" And it's like the sort of hero, like no is not an option, give everything 110%. Like that's sort of the coach yelling, like let's empower, like fire ourselves up. But he is like mathematically trying to get to no is not an option, and
hmm
I see that in your approach too, and that's why it's cool because the potential is great. And how big is the how big is the ecosystem of people that are trying to solve this kind of problem, Asia?
Um, not incredibly big, but it's growing. I would say maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't see a lot of talk about diversifying the types of plants you can grow indoors. It was really focused on the microgreen, the lettuce. And now I've seen a lot more vertical farming companies, container farming companies trying to grow things like strawberries, raspberries, trying to get a little bit more diverse. There's also, unfortunately, the genetically modified option where people are
Right.
modifying the plants to make sure that they only grow a certain height. So that's an option as well. But for the most part, it's been old school trellising. Um,
Yeah.
you know, tying things down with a trellis and doing it that way. And that's what the bulk of the industry still does. And I think you know, that approach works, but at scale, it's very difficult. And for me, and I maybe you might recognize this thought from a book. I can't remember which book it is that I read about the real impact of technology, and that technology is really supposed to allow us to have more time to be creative and to rest. Like technology isn't really here to go faster and to drive more people faster.
Right.
It's here to free us from that burden of labor, and to be able to allow more resources to be spread out so that people can do that. And so that's kind of where my my thought when people push back on automation and technology, it's like it's coming,
Yeah.
and it's either gonna go past you or and mull you over, or you can adapt to it and make it yours. Like put put your put your funk on it and make it yours so that it's the way that you want it to be. So that's what we're trying to do. It's like, all right, it's coming. How do we want it to be, and what can we do to help?
Yeah, you either have a chance to shape it or to watch it shape you, and it's a it's an interesting sort of personal responsibility that I think very few are taking on. And we get this sort of interesting divide of things that happen around like building a business around something, ultimately driving towards revenue growth. And we talk about growing companies, getting towards successful exits. Like you should be obviously rewarded for having bringing something to the market. And so we end up in this an interesting dichotomy of like capitalists. I mean, be careful I say this right. Capitalism and the ability that we can have something created that wasn't there that can then give back to the ecosystem. So in its theory, of course, is right. You know, we won't talk about how trickle economics hasn't doesn't work. There's lots of places it's breaking down, but today's founders, you in particular, you and Dre, everything in your messaging, in your speech, in your thought process, community, team, give back. Like it's entrenched in how you're doing things. And I see more and more people are thinking that way. We kind of get mad at Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and other folks that have obviously become profoundly rich, right? Like they so much money, there's no possible way they could spend it if they just sat there and burned it in piles. They couldn't get rid of it as fast as they're making it. But in cases that we don't often see, they are doing other things that are giving back to the world. It's just that we see the dark parts a lot easier than we see the light.
Yeah.
But as a community supporter, right? What is the opportunity for us in getting more people involved in building these technologies and leveraging these capabilities to truly give back to more people that won't necessarily be founders and may not have access to those kind of resources.
Well, I think some of the stuff that I see is we have the ability to like 3D print. It's just so easy to create nowadays. So I think that everybody who has the true will, I guess, really wants to create, because not everybody really wants to do this stuff, and we don't need everyone doing it, but we definitely need a lot more, and we need a lot more people with a diverse perspective, in a diverse way of trying things. So um, I don't know. I mean, my brain is stuck on the word expert. And this might not answer your question, Eric, so I apologize if it doesn't, but my brain just won't let me avoid that word expert. Um, this isn't really the time for them, in my opinion, right now. We need, because I've been an expert on something, quote unquote, in my corporate life. People considered me in my corporation the top level person that had to make a decision for hurricane engineering in windstorm. But when something new would come to me, because I'm such an expert, I don't see the opportunity. I don't see how this could potentially do something different than what it's currently doing right now. So I really think the opportunity is that the more people we get involved that aren't experts, that are willing to get in and break things and make mistakes and try again, um, we're going to we're going to see we're going to we're going to it's going to yield such incredible technology and things that we can do. And I also, at the same time, the world is changing with the metaverse. Not one metaverse. I'm talking about all of the metaverses that are being
Yeah,
created.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
not doing a plug for an individual company, but all of the metaverses that are being created really allow a lot of people who are more on that creativity side to be able to benefit from the technology that's being developed. So it technology has there's the people that create the technology, that maintain the technology, that use the technology. There's all these connections through it. Um, so the more things that we can create and foster, that's more connections that we're all making, and that fosters community. So I don't know. That's brain's way of answering that question on the fly.
Oh,
So
that's great. No, and I love it, and it reminds me too of like in government representation in so many places, like we really struggle. We're often overly concerned on the impact of capitalism and money, which, again, not going to say that it's pure. Believe there's a whole host of problems, in abuse of that system and abuse of privilege and power in that area. But then in the regulatory side of the world, like, there's not enough representation there of true what the world looks like, right? Like, it's not about, it's diversity of, physical diversity. There's one thing, but having lawyers who are diverse, like 10 lawyers that are from all different, genetic backgrounds, there's still 10 lawyers. We need farmers, engineers, artists, creators. That's the diversity that we really need to embrace, is that diversity of thought, diversity of willingness. And I that's why I'm with you in this idea that, the metaverse concept is going to, open the doors for people with creative ideas, and they can experiment and test. And that's really what we need. And yeah, and as a community too, when I create a community of people, we often, there are communities of practice, there are communities of, commitment to a religion, there are communities of commitments to many different things. Each is a community, and then the blending of those communities in this Venn diagram of common goal. We all want to succeed, grow, empower each other. So how can we see that blending of those things come together, where artists, engineers, mathematicians, farmers, everybody can contribute to this, and have a feeling that they can make something happen, and that's why I love entrepreneurship more and more, like the great resignation. That's why I don't believe the numbers
oh
when they
yeah, I
say
cheer that on. I'm like,
yeah,
yes.
when they say like the jobs numbers are what they are. I'm like, you're measuring the wrong numbers. Like, let's talk about who's creating opportunity, who's creating a new economy. We're going to spend the next decade still wondering why the numbers don't line up to something. Like, we've got more people who don't have aren't on the jobless roll, but who aren't wanting to be on it because they're doing different things now. It's an interesting I love this time. I love the opportunity. The potential is here. I just hope that
Yeah,
more people can unlock it.
yeah, I 100%. It's a fantastic time to be alive, and you don't have to be an engineer to engineer. Like it, there's a lot of opportunity for most of us on this planet. So it's good. It's a good time.
What's the next big problem that Asia is looking to solve?
Whew. All right. For Trella, we've accomplished so much with getting to the point where we have the product. We've got our patent. We're making our first round of deliveries, but scaling it to the point where it can actually be what it is that I see in my mind, that's going to take a lot of help, and that's going to take a lot of capital, and a lot of human capital as well. So one of the biggest um, projects that I have on my plate for this year and next is building this company and building this team. So that's that's really where my energy is right now. Is okay. How do we get this into the hands of more people, um, and what resources do we need to do that? And that's the focus day after day.
Now, I mean, I obviously I don't want to walk you into any things that you wouldn't want to delve into, but like thinking just not necessarily just Trello, but like things like crowdfunding and the next I see there's a lot more sort of like cooperative investments, and this seems like one of those great fits, and I think there's a lot more of that opportunity coming up where we can have cooperative venture capital, where it's not just sort of the restricted set of accredited investors. We're seeing more people doing stuff with, direct investments via AngelList, collaborative investments, crowdfunding investments. It's in a weird space right now because every once in a while a company goes under and a crowdfunded investment goes away and everybody says like, oh, this is horrifying. Like, do you know how many venture capital companies go under? It's like there's a disturbing amount of them. That's most of the bets lose, sadly, at least at the scale that they hope to get this outsized return. But I, it feels like that's an area where you and many others like you have a huge potential if the world is ready to properly do that.
Yeah, yeah. We are huge proponents of crowdfunding. It's really how we got this far. I mentioned that we bootstrapped for a little bit, but the first thing we did after that was we went out to the crowd and we did Indiegogo and raised some money that way, and then we did a Start Engine campaign, which is regulation crowdfunding. So you're giving away some sort of security in exchange for the money you receive. And you're right, like it's open to the public. You don't have to be an accredited investor. You mean like like a high net worth individual. You it could be anyone who is like, hey, I like this idea, I want to support this mission. I may only have like $200, but I want to put my $200 into this, to support it. And
Yeah.
that's what we'll continue to do. I mean, we have another regulation crowdfunding campaign that by the time this airs will be open to the public. So please, when I'll share some information at the end. But check us out, and if you're interested to support us, be a part of it, have some cap, have some some weight
Yeah.
some skin in the game, rather, is what I'll use. Have some, if you want to have some skin in the game, you want to support us, you can invest, and in exchange you get some form of security. It's not just a donation. It's actual, a form of ownership in the company. Um, it allows for a much wider audience of individuals to participate in investment. And I mean, that's really the way that people build wealth, in this, capital structure that we have, is
Right.
through investing. And I just find it crazy that you can, bet on the Super Bowl game without limitation, but you can't put, $100 into a buddy's business without the SEC. That was the old school way. But
Yeah.
now with regulation crowdfunding, you can do that. So I'm glad that it finally is starting to pick up more steam.
Yeah, like the idea that like I have to go and take a Series 6 or Series 9, like at the minimum, I have to take an SEC accredited exam as a like, which is basically equivalent to becoming a financial advisor, just to be able to put in money. And then of course there's like minimum investment levels and minimum, like like you said, it's just a strange concept to me. No one can stop you from pouring money into a slot machine without checking your bank account size, but
Right,
yet I can't invest $1,000 into an equity fund if I don't have 100x that in the bank secured somewhere else.
right, right,
It's just bizarre. Not that I want people treating equity as a bet, but it's like that is a bet. The slot machine is likely to not win. the equity is likely to have at least a modest return.
Right. It's uncertainty. It's all
Yeah.
uncertainty. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I do hope that we see more and more, and I think there's more and more even in the traditional venture capital, sort of like the second stage, that we had like the VCs with the Sand
Hmm.
Hill Road folks, and then they created this wave of initial big companies, and then those people have left their big companies with big and equity results, and now they're becoming investors. And then those next layer, like we're seeing this sort of tree, upside down tree of like now this layer, and those people are saying, the system's broken. We're gonna reboot it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we need a Robin Hood for equity management. I mean, there is regulatory stuff. There are the things that they have to consider, because there's an unfortunate amount of legalese involved once
Hmm.
you have equity involvement in a company, even if it's non-voting equity. But anyways, I like, just the same way that we can change the way we grow food, we can change the way we grow value, monetary value for people that didn't have access to it before. And I think we're getting there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm really happy about what I see, and I think blockchain, Web3, you know, decentralized autonomous organizations, otherwise known as DAOs, um, they they all have potential. And I'm looking at all of them, keeping my eyes on
Yeah.
all of them, and really looking forward to the future. And you know, if as you describe those levels of investors that kind of trickle down, and then there's a lot more options. I've seen a lot of different funds that I didn't see 2 or 3 years ago that are now available, and looking at companies like ours. So if you are one of those investors that you know likes the story, wants to hear more, please take a second if you can, and check out our website. We have an investor um, thing on our menu, so just go there and you'll learn more.
Do it. this is this is a bet I would be willing to make. And it's one of those opportunities now for all of us to do something fantastic, and to see what you and Dre are doing, and you're building a team around it, which is great. So I definitely see that you will have a positive result in one way or another. There will be a positive outcome to this, whatever it looks like, maybe reshaped
It'll
as
be interesting. Yeah.
yeah. But especially like, yeah, post COVID, worlds are changing. The understanding of the impact on the earth is changing. We are the policies that were written that tell us how we should farm were about as equivalent in timing as the first Sandhill Road investors were on the first startups.
Hmm.
It was right, and it created an ecosystem. But we are now at the point where we're saying, like an etch a sketch, all right, let's shake it out. Let's see, let's rethink some of this stuff. And this is, and there's enough people that see the value. There's no more like, the world will outlive me, right? I think there
Yeah.
was a
People
generation
see
of people who
different
were like, they didn't believe they were going to see the change occur, so there was less impetus to make the change.
time. Hmm. Yeah, I
We have
think
a
you're right.
generation in front of us who are like, I'm tired of your shit.
You've done enough. Thank you. We'll take it from here.
Exactly. Let me run with this.
Yeah.
What's in closing, Asia, what's the advice you would give to someone who has an idea that they want to turn into action?
Oh boy. You have the idea and you want to turn it into action. There's so many things that you can do, but I think I'll have to I'll have to start with you. Before you do anything else, you need to figure out you want to why you want to take that next step, whatever that step is. Why are you why are you focused on this idea? Why did you create this idea? If it's 5 years from now and the idea hasn't taken off, what's going to make you still want to work on it? Um, You got to start with what drives you. Um, and then I'll also say there's nothing you can do but act after that. Like there's no like what do you do to act? Like you have to do something. Send the email, pick up the phone, post the post. And trust me, I struggle with that a lot. Like I rather keep things to myself and not share them until I think they're exactly the way I want them. But that perfection stuff is not sustaining. So yeah, figure out why you want to do it before anything else, and then do something.
Love it.
Yeah.
Another quote that I got from somebody, Peter Sisson. He was the founder of a company called Yaza, which they pivoted and he's had a lot of. He'd founded 4 companies. He's a sort of serial entrepreneur, and he says, if you aren't embarrassed about what you produce, then you waited too long. Like there's got to be a little bit of like, I hope this goes okay. Sometimes you just got to push the skateboard over the hill and start gliding. But
Yeah.
you said it just perfectly. Perfect closer to that. So Asia, if someone wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
Yes, please. Thanks for listening all the way till the end for it. Trella.io, TRELLA.io is our website. If you want to check us out on social media, we're on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, Trella Tech. At Trella Tech is our hashtag on most of those. So if you put in at Trella Tech, we'll come up. But Trella Technologies and Trella.io is the best place to find us. Please reach out if you have any ideas or thoughts or anything. We'd love to hear it.
If you want to invest, hit the button, do the thing. Yeah,
That
let's
as
do
well.
this.
Thank
But
you.
people need to do that. I look forward to the chance of maybe I'll dip my toes in some investment waters. I would definitely put a bet on you and Dre. You're doing fantastic stuff. So thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your story today.
Appreciate that, Eric. Really do. Thank you.